winter wind cut through the narrow city streets like a blade, sending scraps of paper and plastic tumbling along the pavement. On the corner near an old bakery, a small boy sat curled against a brick wall, his arms wrapped tightly around his thin body. His name was Evan. He hadn't eaten in 2 days. His stomach ached constantly. But worse than the hunger was the emptiness, the feeling that no one saw him. People hurried past in warm coats, eyes fixed forward, pretending he didn't exist. Some glanced at him briefly, then looked away, uncomfortable with the reminder of a world they preferred not to see. Evan's lips trembled as he watched a man walk out of the bakery, holding a paper bag filled with bread. The smell made his head spin. He lowered his eyes, ashamed of his own desperation. That was when Clara Whitman noticed him. Clara wasn't wealthy. She worked long hours as a cleaner in nearby offices, barely earning enough to cover rent and food. That evening, she was exhausted, her feet aching as she walked home. She almost passed the boy like everyone else, but something made her stop. Maybe it was the way his hands shook. Maybe it was the hollow look in his eyes. She turned back. "Hey there," she said gently, kneeling in front of him. "Have you eaten today?" Evan shook his head slowly, unable to speak. Tears burned his eyes, but he forced them back. He didn't want pity. Clara didn't hesitate. She reached into her bag and pulled out the sandwich she'd saved for dinner, her only meal for the night. She placed it carefully into his hands. "Here," she said softly. "Eat." Evan stared at the sandwich as if it might disappear. "Are you sure?" he whispered. She smiled. "I am." He ate slowly at first, then faster, tears finally spilling down his cheeks. Clara sat beside him on the cold ground, ignoring the stares of passers-by. "What's your name?" she asked. "Evan." "I'm Clara," she said, "and you matter, don't forget that." Before she left, Clara tucked a small piece of paper into his pocket with her first name written on it. "In case you ever need someone to remember you," she said. Evan watched her walk away, warmth spreading through him that had nothing to do with food. That night, for the first time in a long while, he didn't feel invisible, and neither of them knew that this single act of kindness, one sandwich, one moment, would change both their lives forever. The days that followed were still hard for Evan, but they were different now. Whenever hunger or fear crept in, he thought of Clara's smile and the way she had looked at him, not with pity, but with respect. That memory became his anchor. Evan didn't see Clara again. Life on the streets didn't allow for promises or plans. But the small slip of paper with her name stayed folded in his pocket, growing worn with time. Whenever things felt unbearable, he touched it, reminding himself that someone once believed he mattered. Months passed. Evan learned how to survive, where to find food, which shelters were safe, which streets to avoid at night. He was young, but he was smart. He listened, observed, and learned quickly. When a local shelter volunteer noticed his curiosity and discipline, she helped him get enrolled in a community school program. For the first time, Evan had a desk, a pencil, a future. He studied relentlessly. While others slept, Evan stayed awake, reading borrowed books under dim lights. He remembered Clara giving up her only meal for him, and he promised himself he would never waste a chance again. Years passed. Evan earned scholarships. He worked part-time jobs, then internships. He failed more than once, but he never quit. Hunger had taught him resilience. Kindness had taught him purpose. By his late 20s, Evan had built a technology startup from nothing but ideas and determination. What started in a rented room turned into a company that solved real problems and attracted global attention. Success followed, faster than he ever imagined. Yet no matter how high he climbed, Evan never forgot where he came from, or who helped him survive his lowest moment. Every year on the same winter date, Evan walked past the old bakery. The corner had changed, the city had changed, but the memory hadn't. One evening, standing in a tailored suit, Evan paused and whispered the name he'd carried for years. Clara. He had found her, and he was finally ready to come back, not just as a man who had survived, but as someone who could repay a kindness that had saved his life. Clara Whitman's life had not changed much over the years. She still lived in the same modest apartment and worked quietly, never expecting recognition for the kindness she had shown a starving boy long ago. To her, that moment had been simple, human, and she had long since let it fade into memory. One afternoon, a black luxury car stopped outside the office building where Clara worked. She barely noticed it as she finished her shift, tired and ready to head home. But when a sharply dressed man stepped out and walked toward her, something about his eyes made her pause. "Excuse me," he said gently. "Are you Clara Whitman?" She nodded, uncertain. The man smiled, and in that smile something familiar flickered. "You once gave a hungry boy your dinner near an old bakery," he said softly. "You told him he mattered." Clara's breath caught. "Evan," she whispered. Tears filled his eyes as he nodded. "I never forgot you." He told her everything, how her kindness had given him hope, how it had fueled his determination through years of struggle, how he had built a company and eventually become a billionaire. Clara listened in stunned silence, her hand pressed to her mouth. "I didn't save you," she said finally, shaking her head. "You saved yourself." Evan knelt in front of her just as she had once knelt in front of him. "No," he said firmly. "You reminded me I was worth saving." He revealed that he had set up a foundation in her name, one dedicated to feeding, educating, and protecting homeless children. He asked Clara to be part of it, not as a symbol, but as its heart. Clara wept openly now. "I only did what anyone should," she said. Evan smiled. "That's exactly why it mattered." As the sun set behind them, the boy who once starved on a sidewalk and the woman who had shared her last meal stood together, bound not by money or status, but by a single act of kindness that had changed a lifetime. Because sometimes the smallest gesture can create the greatest legacy, and kindness once given always finds its way back.